Tonight I'm going to be reading from this book, which is called Land Art, Theaster Art and Space Initiatives, which was published back in 2018 and is a sort of part manual, part sort of documentation on his urban initiatives, particularly in Chicago, and includes a number of different sort of sections on ethical principles for development, and speaks very lucidly and beautifully about the way in which he practices and sees the role and value of arts and culture in making cities. So I chose this because I'm working with Theaster currently as part of my work at the V&A in making V&A East, the new project in the Olympic Park. And I first met him back in 2016 when a colleague, Matilda Pye, and I invited him to speak at the V&A's annual education conference. He was a keynote, well actually it was just a keynote lecture, not a conference. And we were particularly interested in Theaster's role as a collector and as somebody invested in archives and the material and visual culture of different aspects of histories, particularly for him, collecting material related to Black cultural history in the US. And at the same time we were interested in his initiative in Chicago on the South Side, which has resulted in a number of different projects, from artist housing to urban interventions, manufacturing and skills sort of development, but also as a place that is called the Stony Island Arts Bank, in which he houses these archives and collections, but is also a site for interaction, for public performance, for exhibition making, and for gathering, and has subsequently been to visit that Stony Island, particularly to learn from them and hear about the ways in which they open up archives to a broader public outside of the realm of sort of specialist scholarly interest. So I thought it was quite pertinent as this year, in fact only last month, Theaster became an emeritus fellow working with our V&A Research Institute in collaboration with an independent public engagement fellow, Georgia Hazeldine, who we've appointed to collaborate with him over the next 16 months to look into the V&A's collections, to provocate and collaborate with Georgia to think about how we approach collecting histories, how we interpret objects, but also to make an inquiry together with him as he's reflecting on his own ceramics practice into the sort of meaning, significance and material kind of potential of clay. So it's an interesting time for us to be working with him, but his writing and his projects offer a lot in terms of thinking about place, about identity, about histories, and the sort of connectivity across all of those things. I'm just going to start. This is a long book, it's a big book, so I'm going to start by just talking, reading a little bit from the introduction, and then reading excerpts from each of the 9 principles for ethical development. And then if you're interested, I definitely recommend getting a copy. It's got subsequent sort of longer form essays reflecting on Gates's practice, beautiful documentation of the Black Artists Retreat initiative that he started back in 2013, an anthology of his practice that is more spatialized and about sort of urban intervention. So here we go. So Theaster himself, I've got millions of little page markers here, so I'm probably going to cock this up at some point, but Theaster himself calls this this sort of these principles of ethical redevelopment are sort of are first grade things to people who are forced to be resilient. What I like about this and the writing is the sort of straightforward manner in which everything is expressed, the simplicity of the language and the propositions, and the directness of it, and the simplicity, which may be obvious to some but not always to everybody, and still not within the context of a different form of commercial development. So the introduction, this is me reading now. Making an artistic practice legible so that elements are replicable is a tall task. This was the premise leading to the formation of Place Lab in 2015. The charge: assemble a team, deploy them for 3 years, decipher and demonstrate the role that arts and culture play in neighbourhood development. Theaster Gates is a transdisciplinary artist. His work collapses the gulf between painting, sculpture, ceramics, design, and architecture. The primary subject and preoccupation across all these disciplines is space. His artistic pursuits include the redevelopment of buildings alongside critical and theoretical examinations of race and space. This has resulted in the purchase of buildings and the materials contained within to reimagine them or to propose new uses. Be it a painting or an entire hardware store, the project or artwork is an extension of a deep belief that black people matter, black objects matter, and black space matters. So this is the introduction to this book, which, as it sets out, was the consequence of a 3-year project funded by the Knight Foundation, in part centred around Theaster's professorship at the University of Chicago, where he had trained as an urban planner, but also in ceramics and religion. He's a musician, very broad-ranging, sort of socially engaged practice. But the Place Lab was set up in 2015 to sort of make this rooted inquiry into the types of initiatives and questions that the Theaster's practice and his teaching at Chicago has brought forward, and the questions that have been asked out of that. So now I'm going to just read excerpts from the 9 different principles of ethical redevelopment, which is defined here as a sort of compilation of formal, informal, applied, and case study comments. And ethical redevelopment is a philosophy aiming to shift the value system from conventional profit-driven development practices to conscientious interventions in urban contexts through art and spaces. So the first principle is repurpose and repropose, and the concepts that are framed within this principle include possibility and transgression. Take stock of what is around you. Use what you have or what is available at the time. If a thing is discarded because it no longer has value or use to its previous owner, accept and receive it. Make it work for you. Compel yourself to have a deep engagement with discarded things. Make resources work for you in new and unintended ways. Repurposing is an act of redemption, an act of imagination. Artistry is alchemy. It allows one thing to become another. Be an alchemist in your community. In new hands, there is renewed possibility for the discarded and overlooked. This includes people as well as materials. If you know people, involve them. Who is around you and how are they valuable? How does repurposing objects live alongside the rehabilitation or reclamation of people? How can your work become a pipeline for training individuals whom others have given up on? Repurpose with new purpose. People, property, and materials can be remixed and reimagined if you propose a new use. This, in effect, becomes a transgressive act by replacing allegiance to profit as motivator and allows for other considerations to drive the creation of place. Objects and projects do not have to be monetized to be useful. An abandoned bank can reopen as a collections and cultural centre with highly ambitious programmes and exhibitions set against the backdrop of a stunningly designed, refurbished building. See the Stony Island Arts Bank. A neighbour can be a programmer. A resident next to Dorchester Art and Housing Collaborative is on the Black Cinema Housing Advisory Board, the Black Cinema House Advisory Board. The window from one building can live again as the walls, partitions of another. See Bing Art Books. A defunct currency exchange, a financial centre for patrons who do not use traditional banks, can be repurposed into a well-designed cafe that serves both food, indigenous and foreign, to local populations, encouraging a different kind of exchange. And here he's referring to the currency exchange cafe. This approach to city or community building is about resource availability and ingenuity. Start with what you have and recognize existing local assets and latent value in the discarded and overlooked. There is a conventional way that an archivist would use an archive because of formal training, standards, or best practices as defined by a profession. Questions about preservation of objects and papers may trump accessibility for users. Gates, however, positions the collections he acquires, be they buildings, ashtrays, old ebony and jet magazines, house music records from an iconic Chicago DJ, glass lantern slides of art from around the world, a visiting artist, a commercial enterprise sign, an empty lot, or school furniture, in ways that suggest people, property, and material have multiple uses. The second principle is engaged participation, and the concepts here that he explores are neighbourliness, localism, and access points. Invite others to get involved. Approach participants authentically as you would a neighbour. Work with people who believe in the place, locals embedded by proximity, those connected by a desire to contribute or commitment to a mission. Provide multiple access points or ways to participate. Participation drives the transformation of a place and of those involved. Work as a resident and citizen to spur civic engagement, drawing a relationship between citizen participation and citizen power. Ethical redevelopment proposes developing an engagement framework that calls into question who does the work and with whom and for whom. As many organisations and institutions consider engagement strategies that may be more about informing a public, a one-way relationship, the willing investment of participants' time, talents and resources in a given place redefines the architectural, cultural, social and economic landscape. By engaging with a multiplicity of stakeholders, including staff, institutional partners, residents, artists or practitioners in residence, who share in the transparent negotiation and implementation of a vision, place-based work integrates a sense of social responsibility, neighbourliness and authenticity. Making changes to the physical and spiritual environment brings heat and activity to a neighbourhood for its own benefit. The plan was never to get the people out of the neighbourhood, but instead the plan was to figure out how to further engage people already there. And this is a quote from Robert Rose, Executive Director of Cook County Land Bank Authority. Cultivate and build upon neighbourliness as a way of relating an informal relationship, a cultural practice of reciprocity and interdependence. Engender intimacy by the full familiar nature of programming, discussions, performances, interactions, and shared experiences. The value of the relationship is in the intimacy, not in the duration. Engage for as long as it makes sense to engage. The intimacy sparks commitment to a vision. Building projects, providing programming, and determining space use is not consensus-driven but rooted in a sense of social responsibility. The work of a citizen or resident is directly connected to cities' quests to spur civic engagement. Relatedly, work resulting in changes to the physical and spiritual environment of a place emphasises that there may be a relationship between citizen participation and citizen power. Gates and his team continue to develop and enhance a framework of engagement that questions who work is done by and with and for whom. So, concept number 3, or principle number 3, pedagogical moments. And here we're looking at knowledge transfer and social responsibility. Moments of learning and teaching unfold in all aspects of work. In all aspects of work. Consider the steps in each project that could be instructive. By tapping into the existing, possibly latent talent within a community and putting it to use for the community, exchanges for transfer of knowledge reach across identities, roles, practices, disciplines, generations and localities. Young people need opportunities to experiment, gain experience and imagine their future. Adults who are looking for new chances benefit as well. Bring everyone along for the journey. Cultivate the talent they bring and foster new talent in work that excites them. Experience is the teacher, exposure is the lab. Opportunities can be formalised by creating programming that fosters mentor-apprentice relationships, which allows work being done to function on several levels. A project hardly ever exists as one finite experience. Most circumstances can have revelatory moments, especially if knowledge transfer is part of the design. Whether creating programs that capitalise upon existing talent or establishing workshops, training programs and business accelerators, the ability to recognise moments for knowledge and skill sharing is part of one's social responsibility, effectively deepening the network of relationships within a community, its ecosystem, and with the larger social economy. Without leveraging these structures and moments for pedagogical exchange, opportunities for teaching, learning, and cultivating talent are unrealised. Principle number 4, the indeterminate. And here the concepts being discussed are imagination, intuition, and faith. Suspend knowing, embrace uncertainty, accept ambiguity, allow the work to offer solutions, ask questions in response to problems facing a neighbourhood or city. Resource inequity can be reduced with imagination. The variable of the unknown is built into ethical redevelopment, into the programming and the acquisition of resources. Use faith and intuition to guide methodology, a process that is left undetermined, undefined, or slowly revealed, allowing for a fluidity, dynamism, and creativity that respond to developments in the moment and change direction as needed. Strictly profit-based entrepreneurs work to eliminate uncertainty, opting for careful strategizing and coordination to reach defined goals. Part of the unorthodoxy of ethical redevelopment is that while it is vision-driven, the route to achieve the vision is open-ended. Believe in your project, but resist believing there is only one path to achieve it. You can begin without a clear understanding of your end game. Your intuition is just as powerful as a well-designed strategic plan. This open approach allows for opportunity. People, objects, and buildings are able to present themselves. A more exacting or precise strategy can eliminate possibility and hamper imaginative uses or solutions to challenges. By operating in the realm of the indefinite, multiple questions are posed and framed, and observation, imagination, and reworking enable ideas to be thoroughly wrestled. Interventions need time to gestate. Work is not finite but durational, requiring time to develop a presence and either recalibrate, adapt, stay the course, or phase itself out. Leave room for the unexpected and unanticipated. It may be the best part of the work. Ethical principle number 5 is design. And here we discuss concepts of aesthetics and desirability. Everyone deserves to see and be part of the transformation of their spaces into places. Beauty is a basic service, often not extended to forgotten parts of the city. It is an amenity considered incongruent with certain places. Beautiful objects come from and belong in blighted spaces, just as they do in high investment areas of the city. Creative people can play a pivotal role in how this happens. Beauty has magnetism. It defines character. It promotes reverence. Design can enhance the desirability of a neglected site, corridor, or block while illustrating the reverence and care of a neighbourhood and its residents. Aesthetics may speak loudly or whisper, but either way they draw people in, providing value, respect, importance, and regard for the character of a community. Design ignites and gets people reinvested in a place. These demands on a place become poetic demands. Accordingly, the political demands needed to wake up our cities also become poetic. Alterations of the built environment, tracts of vacant land, or the long-abandoned crumbling corner house affect the psyche of a community. Residents become willing to do things because they see a shift in how a place looks. Your design decisions change how space feels. Previously unengaged neighbours become willing to spend time in the invested place. It departs aesthetically from what is next door. The renovated structures exist for you and for them. Design can interrupt how people perceive themselves by changing the conditions of their daily activity. People look at the built environment and see the world as something worth critiquing, exploring, and constructing. Demonstrating the beauty in what others disregard or diminish creates a powerful contradiction. Design informs the spirit and the use of a place. Design can recalibrate what community comes to consider sacred or cherished, while reinforcing the comfort of identity or identity of home. Places thought to possess no beauty, no design integrity, have value. The ordinary, the leftover, the material remains of a neighbourhood's more prosperous times can be used in new ways to distinguish and attract. You do not have to create something from nothing. Something always remains. Design is about content as much as it is about presentation. Design does not stop at creating the beautiful vessel, but extends to creating its contents. What happens in the building, what is offered, who assembles. It extends to the creation of the contents. What happens... Oh, I've just read that bit, sorry. Urban design thinking asks about the connections that could happen between one house and another, one neighbour and another. I realise this is thirsty work, reading. I don't think I've ever read straight for such a long time. Okay, principle number 6, place over time, which looks at the concepts of flexibility and nimbleness. A sense of place cannot be developed overnight. Actions, interventions, site-specific experiments and investments need adequate time to be realised. Likewise, neglect, abandonment and divestment of a place happen over time. Pockets of cities deteriorate gradually. Thus, activation, density and vibrancy require cultivation for an extended duration, not short, quick fixes. Place is more about the people who inhabit it and the activities they engage in than the space itself. To be an anchoring space in a city, people have to be willing to spend time there. Hot, hip spots come and go. Trendy locations fall short of connecting need with space. Need changes over time, and as a result, space has to change over time. Spaces have to be flexible and nimble. Place-based work is about the aggregation of years of activity and organic development of relationships. When it works, people visit and return in response to offerings that are authentic to the spirit of the place. Intentionality resonates. Visitors can shift from users to participants. They can become invested in the sustainability of the place and contribute to the quality of the experience. Participants come to rely on anchor spaces as consistent resources of cultural and spiritual sustenance. Gates invests in a building, neighbourhood, community and people over a long period of time, an aggregation of years. Short-term engagement as an artist, developer or neighbour misses the shifts within and among people and in their surrounding circumstances and environment, as well as the fact that many of the socio-economic conditions that require redress have been decades or centuries in the making. To accommodate the changing needs of people in a place, spaces and capital need to be flexible. Being in a place over a period of time takes into consideration the whole of the ecosystem of engagement, its cyclical nature, the changing roles that people play, the different uses and names for a space, sources of funding and which projects they're allocated to, and the interrelatedness of projects and the effects of one on another. Principle number 7, stack, leverage and access. And here we're talking about scaling up and strategy. An investment in yourself, in your ideas and projects sends a signal to those watching your work. It is critical to have skin in the game, to have something at stake even if the investment is sweat equity. Making change requires conviction and commitment. Utilising belief, brain power, energy, time and dogged perseverance. Projects like these require belief and motivation more than they require funding. Whether an intervention is a single project, location or gesture, it has impact and reverberation. Early small success can enable the next project. leveraging the attention garnered by the work to amplify it. Or leverage the attention garnered by the work to amplify it. Let the work attract more believers. A good idea is as crucial as establishing relationships with funders, gaining access to multiple spheres of influence, and incorporating expertise. Turn interest and excitement into investment. Resource streams should be diverse, stacked, and bundled to meet the price tag of your projects. Over time, a project from your initial days of engagement and experimentation can mature. Something that you passionately believe in, but had little external backing for, can grow in scale and scope to become a sophisticated version that many stakeholders support and believe in. Demonstrating capacity permits access to greater resources. Proof of infrastructure is persuasive. Gates discovered that making change on this level required the conviction of ideas and vision, and personal investment of belief, brainpower, energy, time, money, and dogged perseverance. It was imperative to have skin in the game, to have something at stake, to believe first in himself and what he wanted to do, which is something that others cannot provide. Principle number 8 is constellations, and here we're talking about ecosystems and diverse entities. Charismatic leaders are ineffective without teams. Both are strengthened by the presence of others. Complementary skills and practices advance work. Collaboration allows for some of the best work to emerge from a process. Teams benefit from mindful curating and exchanges across speciality. Projects need visionaries, believers, implementers, collaborators, and evaluators. A vibrant constellation or a rich ecosystem is responsive to the pairings and groupings that suddenly emerge. Some webs of connectivity mature more slowly, gradually revealing formerly unseen affinities. A project taps into a particular kind of power when it refuses to be singular, when it takes up space and assembles believers from disparate corners. One person cannot repurpose a space, engage a community, or facilitate change alone. Engagement is a set of interactions between people who are ideally working towards common goals. The visionary, or often charismatic leader who originates the effort or enterprise cannot manifest the vision in isolation. Gates's partnerships evolved out of a progression of projects during which he realised that if I were able to talk to other people that were actually really good at creating new space, talk to developers and architects, then maybe they could be partners in this work, he says. He talked to diverse private and public entities, government and educational and financial institutions, foundations, developers, non-profit organisations, businesses and community leaders. The evolving partnerships revealed the importance of collective engagement with a diverse group of people based on a holistic vision of development. This vision of development does not focus on a single element, i.e. arts, business or education, but instead requires a collaboration between multiple constituencies, including policymakers, artists and community members, to produce a constellation of businesses, programs and venues. Over time, Gates found that courting new partners led to having the time and capacity to receive other people's interests as a way of learning to partner. The final principle is platforms. And the concepts here are very much in Theaster's words, the thing that makes the thing and hang time. Regardless of regional circumstance, many of our cities suffer the same challenges: neglect, population loss, and abandoned buildings that defy the limits of the neighbourhood's imagination. Often the proffered solution is singular, but one building, individual or programme cannot reroute a neighbourhood's trajectory. A community needs a platform, a foundation that creates new social possibilities, a structure that incubates new economic or artistic prospects. A platform is a mechanism to propel work forward. It creates conditions of multiplicity, compounds ideas, expands relationships, germinates opportunities, and widens access. A stage or platform is often invisible. It operates not in service to itself, but to reinforce what can be. A just city is required to facilitate platforms that engage those who are not fully tapped into their power and feel cheated out of the right to publicly demonstrate their power. Don't just create the thing that makes the thing. Platform building means developing opportunities for people to gather and commune. The event, what is happening, is beside the point. The point is that folks are meeting, exchanging and learning, Create intentional hang time. Hang time builds bonds, which build community. A space that encourages deep conversation, new friends, and ultimately a community of people who want to be a transformative part of a transformative work in the neighbourhood. A space where like-minded folk can come and say, what else can be done? What can I do 10 blocks away from my block? How do I share what I love to do with others? The physical rebuilding of spaces and places, the partnerships that garner the attention, support and funding, the team that works out the logistics, aesthetic and intentions, these elements get places ready, but a place needs something happening in it, something to make it come alive. Building the stage is half the work. Once the stage exists, activation with people and objects and events adds complex layers. In ethical redevelopment, the stage is the thing that makes the thing, the platform that enables the programming to happen, creating community and generating buzz. Gates created spaces for people from diverse backgrounds to share something about themselves, their ideas and culture, and to connect with others. He did this by providing opportunities for people to gather and commune over a shared event. The event, what is happening, is almost beside the point. The point is that people are meeting, exchanging and learning together. Gates calls this hang time, which builds bonds, which build community. And there we have the 9 principles of ethical redevelopment from this marvellous book, which I'm sure you can find if you scout around online or check out Theaster Gates' Rebuild Foundation or his representation at White Cube and Reagan projects in Los Angeles. Anyway, thank you. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now, apart from to say it's been very nice to talk to my telephone and see lots of people commenting as I was trying to read, which is slightly distracting. So thank you. Goodbye. Oh, I got some applause. Thank you.